For context, I, 23F, have known this guy, 24 male, I guess I'll call him Roger, for 6 years now. He and I were put into a musical ensemble together our first year of college and we stayed in it for 4 years. This group is also where I met my boyfriend, 24M, and where my boyfriend met Roger also. There were a couple other guys in the group, and we all were and have remained pretty good friends, especially since the other 4, including my BF, are in a band together they continued after college. I wasn't excluded from this group, I just really wasn't interested in the time commitment, so I declined to join when they started out. They have actually become pretty well known in our local scene, they're a really talented group. Anyways, on to the current situation. Roger has been with his fiancée, 22F, since before I met him, and when she came to the same school we were in, all the rest of us in the group became pretty friendly with her. I wouldn't really consider her a friend, we have no beef as far as I'm aware, we just aren't really close and we only really talk at shows. I do like her though, and we always make a point of saying hi to each other when we see each other and have a friendly chat. So my BF and I have known these guys literally the same amount of time. We spent all of college with Roger seeing each other at least twice a week for this group, although it was usually much more, and we still hang out with them sometimes outside of the band scene. So Roger is getting married to his fiancée this summer. I of course wish them both congratulations when I heard the news of their engagement. A couple months ago, we got the save the date in the mail. It was addressed to only my boyfriend. Which I thought was a bit odd, but it was only the save the date, so I didn't really think much of it. Put it on the fridge. Well, last week, the wedding invite came. It was again addressed to just my boyfriend. We opened it and there was no indication of even A+1 or anything. Which I really don't think I should be A+1 for my boyfriend, I feel I should be invited on my own merit. My boyfriend said they maybe just addressed it to him because we live together, but that's exactly my point. We live together, so if it's for both of us it should be addressed to both of us, otherwise I assume mail addressed to him is his. I'm honestly incredibly hurt by this. I guess it's fine if they don't really see us as friends, but I still feel like the fact that they know my boyfriend and I both live here and they know I'm expecting to be invited seeing as everyone else from this old group makes this feel like a real punch in the gut. So I guess my question is twofold actually, Ada for being offended by this in the first place? And Wibta if I ask them why I wasn't invited? Hi everyone. This is a throwaway, I used it previously to ask about this situation on Ada a couple months back, but as the event is approaching my fiancé is starting to make me question if I'm actually reading the situation right, and I just would really like to get some other takes on the situation. So to summarize my previous post, we have friends, unsure on that one, getting married this weekend. The question of my last post was about the fact that my name was not on the invitation that was sent to my fiancés in my apartment. My fiancé and I met each other at the same time as we met the groom, and we got together about a year and some change later. We worked pretty closely in a musical group throughout school, and then my fiancé and the other members of that group decided to continue and form their own band. I was not excluded from this, just was not particularly interested in the time commitment, and I don't regret that decision because they are busy mother F. seekers. But being that my fiancé and I are still together, I see the groom and his bride-to-be quite often. We've never had any beef as far as I know, and we always have friendly conversation and say hello to each other, like each other's stuff on Instagram and whatnot. Given the background of our relationship, and the fact that my fiancé and I have lived together for 3 years and they sent the invitation to the apartment that we share, the fact that my name was not on the invitation says to me that I am not invited. My fiancé kept trying to say oh maybe they didn't know they were supposed to put your name on it too, or insisting it was a mistake because maybe someone else wrote the invites, to which I told him they would have written the invites based on the names they were given. I asked if I would be TA if I asked them why I wasn't invited, to which I was told I would be, and I was probably right, I wasn't invited. Though others did agree on how insanely rude it was of them. I accepted that answer, and while I still feel the whole thing was rude, I've let it go and I don't plan to talk badly about them or to them or cause any drama because it's up to them who's at their wedding. They won't be at mine. My fiancé accepted I was right about the situation after another person from this group also recently sent out save the dates for his wedding and both our names were on the invite, and I pointed out to him a month before we'd received an invite from one of my fiancé's friends I'd only met a couple times, and both of our names were on the invite. But I digress. The purpose for today's post is that the wedding is this weekend. For some reason, my fiancé keeps asking me if I'm going. Apparently he asked the groom and he was told verbally that I am invited, but given the fact that my name was not on the invitation, nor was it on the save the date we received earlier, I really can't just go off of that as enough evidence that I'm welcome there. I really believe that if I was invited, after my fiancé asked why my name wasn't on the invitation, one of them should have reached out directly to me if they actually are expecting me to show up. But they haven't, and for some reason my fiancé believes they're expecting me to be there. And he keeps saying he doesn't want to have to explain to people why I'm not there. And I keep telling him there isn't anything to explain, I wasn't invited. But here's where I'm conflicted. I truly do not want to start drama surrounding their wedding. I respect their decision not to invite me if that's how they want their day to be. I don't think anyone should ever have to invite somebody to their wedding that they don't want to. But I also am fully aware that there are going to be several people there who are close to my fiancé and I as a couple who are going to wonder why I am not there, and it may cause a fuss if anyone asks the bride and groom directly. Which I realize may come off as main character syndrome. I don't really think people will be that concerned about where I am but my fiancé and go everywhere together, so my absence will definitely be noticed by our friends, and some of them aren't good at knowing when to just let things be. And so I genuinely have no idea what to do here. Here are the options I can see right now. 1. Take my fiancé's word for it that they do want me there despite everything saying the opposite and show up, risking being unwelcome and possibly upsetting them on their wedding day. 2. Don't go. Come up with a fake story for my fiancé to tell everyone so that nobody will try to go poking for gossip. 3. Don't go. Tell my fiancé to either just state the truth, that I wasn't invited, or he can come up with a story on his own if he's not comfortable with that. I'm leaning towards option 3, which honestly does feel kind of petty, and my reasoning is that if they didn't want people to ask why I'm not there, they should have invited me to be there. Which definitely is a bit petty. But I just don't see why I should lie for them when they don't even respect me as my fiancé's long-term partner who they have spent many years getting to know, let alone as a friend to them. What do you guys think? Is there another option here where I don't feel like I'm being a doormat while also avoiding coming across as an asshole? Or is this one of those situations where I can really only have the high ground if I cover for them because it's their wedding day? Any thoughts and advice welcome, please and thank you. And feel free to ask any clarifying questions if anything doesn't make sense or if it seems like anything is missing. Smile. Also, there is one detail I couldn't quite figure out where to fit in here, but when we initially received the invitation, the second envelope for their wedding addressed to just my fiancé, I talked to a friend of mine about it who vaguely knows who the couple is because I wanted to ask someone who wouldn't bring it up to them if I was overreacting, and she ended up telling me last month that she found out a different friend of hers who was really good friends with the bride all through school and thought they still were friends was also not invited. I'd if that makes much a difference in the overall take of the situation, but it does seem relevant. Edit. If you aren't going to read the post, don't comment. I wanted to ask them for clarification, but since I've never been in this position before, I wanted to ask others who maybe have more experience with weddings how I should ask. Everyone said that I would be an absolute asshole for even considering asking as it's their wedding and it is obvious I am not invited, and putting them in that position to have to tell me that to my face would be wrong. Instead of getting mad at me for asking for advice on handling this situation, you should have joined in the first time I asked, and then maybe the reaction you would have received would demonstrate to you why I thought it was inappropriate to ask. Edit 2. Also, I apologize. At the previous post I mentioned isn't anywhere to be found. I wasn't really planning on using this throwaway again, and since I'd gotten the answer I needed I just deleted it a couple weeks after I posted it. I'd count to see deleted posts, but if anyone can find it you'll see this post lines up with it, and the general comment consensus was that I absolutely should not ask the couple for clarification. Thank you to everyone who had actual advice and helped me figure out the right decision. To me, to everyone who's being super condescending about me not asking them, how would you feel if you didn't invite somebody to your wedding and then they confronted you about it? I get you should be upfront with them, but some people just don't want to risk the drama, and I guess that's fine too. It's their day. It's not really my place to kick up a fuss about it. If it turns out that it was a mistake, then they can explain that to me and we can laugh about it and move on. But if I am in fact right, it would be really shitty to them to make a fuss about it when the day has nothing to do with me. This isn't about this generation too scared to talk to people, it's actually about having common courtesy to realize when it is appropriate to make a situation about me and when it is not. This is one of those situations where it is not, so I wanted to know the best way to make sure I uphold the fact that I don't want to be a source of drama for them surrounding their wedding. I did get a lot of good perspectives about possible mistakes that could have happened here, and I'm super happy to accept that as a reality if they explain that to me, but for right now, I'm just going to quietly accept the situation as is and find something fun to do this weekend instead. Update 1. So first of all, I'm very glad I didn't go. My fiancé was quite unhappy when he came home from the wedding and told me I was onto something. Turns out I was not the only partner that was missing, but my fiancé is still a bit confused by the whole thing because it struck him as really weird who didn't have their partners there. Plenty of people did ask about me and where I was. My fiancé just kind of generically told them I couldn't make it. But the bride and groom did not ask about me, though the groom came up to my fiancé and said something about, "Can't wait for your wedding," which is what made him realize I was right about the whole thing. None of the bridal party, many of whom we know well, asked about me, which also stood out to him considering how many of the guests did. One thing that strikes me as odd is that my fiancé confirmed there was no designated seat for me, but there were a lot of empty seats. Which leads me to wonder if they knew how entirely confusing and weird this was and they were preparing for people's spouses that weren't invited to show up and play it off by having a seat available. I don't know. That's pretty much it. The whole thing honestly feels even more confusing after the wedding, but I do at least think it's pretty clear that I was right and made the right decision in not going. No real drama happened, and I'm not gonna really bother to try and find out more from them or from anyone else, but it is disappointing to say the least. My fiancé is pretty disappointed too to find how little these friends respect not just me as a person, but me as his partner. But that's just how it goes sometimes, I guess. I really just wish they had been direct, even if the reason they gave was a lie, that I wasn't invited. I would have understood if they said it was a matter of numbers, but the way they went about this just seems so pathetic and cowardly to me. But it appears as if we weren't the only long-term couple they did this to, so I think it says a lot more about them than it does about me. Now on to second story. Discovered my mother-in-law infected my daughter with chickenpox on purpose using a contaminated blanket. Now I want her out of our lives. This year my husband, 31 males, and I decided to spend Christmas with his family for the first time since my daughter was born last September. Since they live 12 hours away, we decided to stay for a few weeks before Christmas so they could spend loads of time with Annie, 13 months. We arrived early like we planned and everything was great. I've had a few disagreements with my mother-in-law Trish, 56F, in the past over my parenting style. She criticized me for using disposable diapers, buying baby food from the supermarket and not raising Annie as an organic baby, but everything seemed great. After a day or two settling in, my husband and I decided to pick up a few gifts from a mall around an hour away before the last-minute rush kicked in. My father-in-law, 60M, tagged along. Trish said she was happy to take care of Annie. We got back a few hours later and Annie was down for a nap on a blanket I didn't recognize. Trish said one of her friends dropped by and gave it as an early Christmas gift. It looked pretty old/worn, but I figured one of her hippie friends was just recycling it. The next 2 weeks were fine, aside from Trish making a point to prepare meals for Annie from scratch. I mentioned this to my husband and he said to just let her be. Annie mostly mushed the food Trish gave her with her hands through the bowls on the floor, as she's been doing at the moment. Trish said it would take her a while to get used to nutritious meals. I was getting sick of her meddling, but it was only for a few weeks, so for the sake of the holidays I let it slide. The day after Christmas Annie was really unsettled and wouldn't stop fidgeting and crying. I took her temperature and she had a fever, so I kept an eye on her for the next few days and it thankfully started to go down. This morning, she started to get a rash and blisters on her arms and legs and I freaked out. I was packing a bag to drive to see a doctor when Trish asked where I was going. I told her Annie a rash and I was taking her to see a doctor. She got a weird smug smile on her face and told me there was nothing to worry about. When I asked her what she was talking about, she said without even looking at Annie that what she had was just chickenpox. I asked her how she could possibly know that and she casually admitted one of her friend's grandkids had chickenpox a few weeks ago, so she asked them to wipe a blanket over the child's arms, legs and face and bring it to her house. At this point I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I asked if that blanket was the gift Annie was sleeping on. She said it was. I lost my shit. To be honest, I don't really remember what I said because I was up most of the night for 2 days checking on Annie. I just unleashed on Trish asking what the fuck was wrong with her. My husband and father-in-law came to try to calm things down and Trish dug in her heels and said chickenpox was the best and most natural thing for Annie to build up her immunity. I already have a vaccination schedule in place with my pediatrician and she was booked in to get immunized for chickenpox at 18 months. We drove to see the doctor and he confirmed she had it. He said I'll have to cut Annie's nails short and might have to tape socks on her hands while she sleeps because kids so young can scratch until they bleed and that will leave scars. On the drive back my husband started making excuses for Trish, that she was only doing what she thought was best. I couldn't believe he was defending her and we fought most of the way home until I told him to stop talking to me. Annie's been scratching like crazy and I just had to tape socks over her hands. Trish tried to talk to me when we got back and I told her to get out of my sight. We were meant to stay until Wednesday, but I just finished packing up our stuff so we can leave first thing in the morning. I'm so angry I can't even think. Whenever I hear Trish moving around in the kitchen my heart starts beating faster and I feel like going out there and grabbing her by the hair. I don't ever want to see her again or let my daughter see her again. What can I say to make her and my husband realize the enormity of what she's done? I don't think I can speak coherently to their faces until Annie gets better. Update 1. Over the holidays my mother-in-law Trish, 56F, deliberately infected my daughter Annie, 1F, with chickenpox by wrapping her in an infected blanket while she was left alone with her for several hours. Trish didn't tell anyone what she had done until Annie came down with a horrible fever and rash. Annie was booked in for her chickenpox vaccination at 18 months, but Trish thought what she did is 100% normal, despite the fact it's caused Annie significant pain and distress, and now scarring to her face and arms. When I found out what she did I was livid and had a shouting match with her and packed up our things to leave the very next morning. It soon came out my husband Jack didn't think Trish had done anything wrong. On to the update. I didn't think it would be possible, but things got worse. I got up first thing the next morning and started packing our stuff into the car. Once I opened it up I kept the keys in my pocket since I was going in and out. Usually we use Jack's set and leave mine in my bag. While I was packing he sat in the kitchen with Trish and my father-in-law, 60M, and chatted and had coffee like nothing was wrong. Annie was mercifully still asleep, so I just gently belted her in and closed her door when Jack came out and asked if I had everything. I said we were good to go as soon as he was. He said okay and calmly took out his key set and centrally locked the car, locking Annie in. I asked him what the hell he was doing and he said we wouldn't be leaving until I apologized to Trish. I think I was stunned into silence because he then took the chance to rehash what he said the previous day, that Trish thought she was doing what was best, that chickenpox doesn't kill you and that I was making a bigger deal out of this than I needed to and making Trish feel bad. Yes, making her feel bad. All the comments from my last post were swirling around in my head, and I told him he needs to stop being a son and start being a father. He screwed up his face and said he would always be Trish's son, and that was the point, that nobody should speak to his mother the way I had the day before, and I needed to apologize to clear the air. I felt like I had entered some kind of weird twilight zone where I had accidentally married a 9-year-old instead of an adult man, so I just asked him to open the car so we could leave. He repeatedly refused, then walked back inside and said he would see me in there when I was acting more reasonable. You can probably guess what happened next. I'd left my bag on the passenger seat, so he probably assumed my keys were in there. Nope. I waited 30 seconds, then just hopped into the car and drove away. My phone blew up with a million calls from him, Trish, and my father-in-law. Eventually my mom and dad and my sister Jess, who I'm super close with, called as well. I briefly texted Jess about what was happening the day before, but she was stunned to get the full blow-by-blow. By the time I was on the open road, I asked her to phone Jack and tell him he could walk home for all I care. Once she heard my side of the story, and not Jack's, which was apparently that I had gone crazy, frightened Trish, snatched Annie and sped away, she calmed way down. Mom, Dad and Jess offered to start driving and meet me halfway so I could switch with one of them and wouldn't have to drive the full 12 hours by myself in one day. I was so grateful to see them I pretty much broke down in a truck stop parking lot while I blubbered that I loved them. They all took turns driving while I had a rest. It was super reassuring to talk it over and hear that Trish and Jack are the unreasonable ones. Once we got back I stayed at my parents' overnight and they said I could stay as long as I needed. The next few days were fairly tense. I was up most of the night making sure Annie didn't scratch, which she did anyway, somehow, and it seemed like she just cried and cried and cried until she was exhausted. She has 5 scars on her face and a few others on her arms from scratching. I know appearances shouldn't matter, but I'm so angry her skin is marked for life now over some stupid bullshit. This whole thing is just something I never expected to happen. I answered one of Jack's calls only to have him start a rant that he didn't recognize this person I had become, so I hung up on him. He was due to come back for the start of the work year, which I wasn't looking forward to, but I figured we could make it work as long as Trish was 12 hours away. Then at like 11 p.m. one night I got a very short and formal text from father-in-law via Jack's phone, saying Trish had come down with shingles and was in the emergency room, that Jack was staying there to care for her, and that he would work from their house remotely once the year started back up. Jack's been there for the past few weeks tending to Mama's every whim. I'm sure she's put on an Oscar-worthy performance of having one foot in the grave, and according to Google it should be any day now that her painful, crusty pustules go gently into that sweet night. A few weeks ago I was honestly so tired and overwhelmed and in disbelief that I didn't know what to do. Now I'm back at home with people who actually care about me. I think I'm starting to realize how lucky I am to see the weird relationship with his mommy this early on. The fact that he cares more about Trish than his own daughter speaks volumes. When he eventually comes back I think we'll have to have a serious talk about our future together.